Now, because the Cabinet has approved the extension of its defective concrete block scheme already on offer to homes in counties Donegal and Mayo to now include houses in counties Clare and Limerick. Ministers were told the cost of the MICA scheme is expected to rise by €500 million since the last estimate of €2.2 billion. So campaigners suggest the number of buildings and counties affected will rise. Drive Time's John Cook has been meeting affected homeowners in County Clare, and he's with me now. Tell me, John, first of all, tell us more about what's changed in this controversial scheme today.
Well, this Cabinet decision today, Cormac, gives operational effect to the enhanced MICA redress scheme that was announced last November, with a potential 100% grant to rebuild affected homes, subject to a €420,000 cap, while a second cap of €145 to €161 per square foot is also part of the deal. And listeners will be familiar with the mineral mica, as outlined in an extensive series of reports by my colleague Barry Lenihan. It has the capacity to absorb water, cause concrete blocks to crumble and put entire homes at risk of collapse, and it affects an estimated 7,000 homes, mostly in Donegal and Mayo. But a similar damaging mineral called pyrite is understood to be at fault for similar building defects in counties Limerick, possibly affecting 700 homes, though Limerick City and County Council told me they haven't yet determined a final figure, while in County Clare a council spokesperson said their best estimate is between 620 and 678 properties, though the local Pyrite Action Group suggests a figure higher than 1,000, which could include several public and private housing estates as well as public buildings in the county. So to get a sense of the problem in the region, I visited the family home of Mary and Seamus Hanley in Drumline, Newmarket-on-Fergus. They're on the flight path to Shannon Airport, and they showed the damage here to Housing Minister Darragh O'Brien as well as Sinn Féin's Mary Lou MacDonald during similar visits last summer. And it's hard to describe, Cormac, just how badly affected their four-bedroomed 34-year-old two-storey home has been affected by cracks. I've tweeted some images which listeners can have a look at later just to see, because there are thick black lines running across the exterior white walls, leaving it resembling something like a jigsaw. And inside, Mary showed me where the cracks first began to show almost 2.5 years ago.
But when COVID hit and I was working here in the study, I noticed these cracks here. Now, the cracks here in the study, in the inside wall, I can stick a skewer.
I was wondering why you have the skewer by the window. Will you show me that?
You just stick it into the concrete blocks, and the skewer, it goes all the way through, and the skewer is a good foot long.
My goodness. So this crack comes up from the floor, the skirting board, right up to the windowsill,
yes.
Then from the top of the window right up to the corner. But that skewer, any part of that's crack,
yes,
the foot-long skewer will go all the way through
it. Will go straight in through.
So there's nothing there. You can poke that skewer right through the wall of your home, and it's right around the house.
It's right around.
You walk around and show me.
Yes.
I can see the walls coming away from the windows. Yes. Your cracks, on the advice of your engineer, you were telling me, has been filled with this black-coloured expanding filler. So on your white two-storey family home here, there's just black lines and cracks everywhere. I mean, it's hard to imagine a more visible sign of how your home is crumbling.
Initially, there was just that one crack up high up there, and now you can see the state of it's like a work of art, really, if you wanted to look at it like that.
I'm impressed that you can smile about it. I'd say there's been some stressful times.
I'm just laughing, actually, John, at the idea of Minister O'Brien was here on the 27th of August last, and I showed him those cracks. And since Minister O'Brien was here, we now have between 16 and 20 new cracks in the walls. And he did say it would be a matter of weeks before terribly in the scheme.
Last August, a matter of weeks. So we're here in June. We're the guts of a year later. Finally today, he says Clare and Limerick are included. How do you feel about that?
Well, I suppose we're delighted, finally, to be in the scheme. That was what we set out to do, was to get into the defective concrete block grant scheme. Now, of course, the devil now is in the detail.
And you have reservations about that, Seamus.
The worry we
420,000 is the cap you've been hearing about. I don't know how much it'll take to rebuild, but that's what you expect. Full demolition and rebuilding.
Full demolition and rebuilding, and as well as that, we possibly have to replace the foundations. And the scheme doesn't include the foundations, as far as we know, apart from not including the demolition work, the demolition itself, the painting, the decorating, the floor finish, the doors, the windows. All of those things have to be met by the taxpayer. As well as the limitations to the scheme, it seems that a department official can come out to do a visual inspection in order to see how wide the cracks are. And if the cracks aren't wide enough, you may not get into the scheme for God knows how long. What we're hoping is that we'll get the go-ahead to rebuild our house in full, with a full cover of the costs, etc., and sooner rather than later, because we're at our wits' end at this point, and the stress of it and everything else, you know.
At their wits' end, indeed. Seamus and Mary Hanley at their cracked and crumbling home in Drumline and Newmarket on Fergus, a beautiful part of the country. How long will it take for them now, John, to rebuild their homes and get on with their lives, I wonder?
It's the really big question, Cormac, and so hard to say for families in Clare, Limerick, Donegal or Mayo who've waited years already but still have questions and concerns about this scheme today and whether it will work, whether they'll get the full cost of rebuilding their homes, or whether how much more they might have to pay themselves, whether they might be offered repairs and the cracks will come back, or if other minerals in these defective blocks have yet to be uncovered. And we heard, of course, in yesterday's programme as well, the suggestion there could be further protests, there could be efforts to bring down the government from some campaigners over this very contentious issue. The Taoiseach told the Dáil this afternoon, we need to get going on this expanded mica compensation scheme. It's time to move on this. He was responding to Donegal's Pádraig McLaughlin of Sinn Féin, who said families have been let down again and again, and called for full scrutiny and transparency in the scheme to be guaranteed, because the Cabinet has agreed to request the Oireachtas Housing Committee to agree to waive pre-legislative scrutiny on this bill to provide for the scheme and to get it going, as the Taoiseach said. The Tánaiste Leo Varadkar told the News at 1 on Radio 1 today he believes the mica redress scheme today is final, but that any proposals made in the Dáil will be listened to. And it's a major issue of concern for the Clare Pyrite Action Group founder, Dr. Martina Cleary, too. Her small bungalow in Crusheen near the Clare-Galway border faces demolition too after cracks began to appear in 2020. Martina's a lecturer and researcher at the Technological University of Shannon, so she began researching this issue and campaigning for inclusion for Clare homes in the government scheme. But she and other campaigners plan to be outside Dáil Éireann again tomorrow to demand more details and insist on pre-legislative scrutiny for this bill that she believes could go further than 4 counties and higher than the cost of €2.7 billion.
So it really started in County Clare in August 2020 when I discovered I had it in my house. And that day I had an IS 465 engineer come out. He told me I had suspected defective concrete blocks. When I said, what can I do? He said, well, there's no grant, there's nothing you can do. You can fill in the cracks with, non-shrink grout, or silicone or something and paint it up as best you can and hope for the best. I said, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, my house is it's a ticking time bomb, it's on the clock. And I suppose my way of dealing with this has been to develop insight on this, develop knowledge, have the facts and figures there so that nobody could definitively say that it wasn't in Clare. I had to prove it.
It's been a tough couple of years, so to prove that, finally being part of this scheme, this 2.7 billion scheme we're hearing about, you'd like a bit more detail today.
So I suppose for people listening that aren't impacted by this, when you hear this notion of billions, we're talking about thousands of houses here, and at the end of the day, this is our home, and it's been incredibly stressful. Like, this has taken 2 years of my life, and also the people that are on the front lines of this. The next phase of the campaign, now that we have the grant, is going to be really looking at that, the physical and mental impacts. You've seen the black mold in this house. Like, people are talking about billions. You're talking about human lives here. You're talking about families devastated, communities torn apart, and people's lives just put on hold with the agony and the duress that they've put us through. And continue to put us through in this.
You're still worried about this scheme, whether it's fit for purpose, and you want to demand answers from government. You're going to Dáil Éireann tomorrow to do that, to protest, or what will you be asking for?
Well, what we're asking for tomorrow is we're making our presence known. We have been included today, but again, there's been absolutely no consultation, there's been no discussion, there's been no contact from Dublin. So Clare Pyrite Action Group are going up tomorrow to join any of the other action groups to stand outside the Dáil. And we want to make our position known to politicians that are going in, why it's so important for pre-legislative scrutiny, that you can't pass a bill of $3 billion while continuing to blatantly ignore the stakeholder input.
The pre-legislative scrutiny that you are demanding, though, it will take time, it'll take longer, but you feel it has to be got right.
It has to be done. There's no point in throwing more billions of euro in taxpayers' money. We're all taxpayers. The bill is coming back to us, which it shouldn't. Every single guilty party in this should be included in the bill. So, why throw good money after bad? This has to be done right.